Okay, so Black Clover chapter 266 is out, and I feel very confident in saying that this chapter's cliffhanger is probably going to be the most hyped cliffhanger for a lot of fans of, at the very least, 2020, if not since the beginning of the series, because this moment that we get at the very end of the chapter, even though it's brief, is something that we have been waiting for since damn near the beginning of the series. I mean, this single moment right here, which I'll get to later on in the video, I'm not going to talk about it just yet, but still, this single moment right here made it worth waiting the 2 weeks we had to get this chapter. Now, the only thing when it comes down to this moment that I'm concerned about is that Tabata has a tendency to set up something very hype at the end of a chapter, and then in the following chapter, diverge to a completely brand new story. And I have a feeling that that's what's going to happen next week, that after setting up something this hype, we're going to go off somewhere else, probably back to the Heart Kingdom to see a little bit of Noelle and them's training, maybe focus on Yuno for a little bit. We're just going to, Tabata's going to start up some brand new storyline to diverge away from this and probably make us wait a few weeks before we even get back to this. And I mean, we've seen this happen multiple times. Like, think back to when we got Dante and Nami fighting off, and just how at the point where that fight was getting the most hype, he diverged away over to the Heart Kingdom to focus on the fights between everyone over there. And then the same thing happened a few times during the reincarnation arc. I still personally haven't forgiven Tabata from pretty much skipping over after hyping me up so much about it, but pretty much skipping over the entire fight between Noelle and Fauna. That was possibly the fight that I was the most hype about when it came to the Elves versus the Magic Knights. And the fact that he completely skipped over it, I'm still hurt by that. And I'm really hoping he doesn't pull the same thing with this cliffhanger. But at the same time, I can understand if he does end up doing it. Because, I mean, one, it obviously builds up a lot more hype around this. And two, it gives Tabata more time to plan out exactly what he wants to do and what he wants to accomplish with this storyline. Anyway, finally getting into the actual chapter, we started off with a nice colored cover page of Noct and his 4 demons that he summoned during the captain's meeting. And I feel like we've been getting a lot of colored cover pages for Black Clover lately. It feels like it's been, what, just 3, 4, maybe 5 chapters since we got the last one? Actually, no, it was only, I think only 2 chapters before this that we got the last colored cover page. And sure, that was for the poll results, but still, there was a colored cover page not that long before that one. So we've been getting a lot of colored cover pages for the series. And I wonder if that's because Black Clover's been a lot more popular lately. I don't know. I haven't really looked at the sales for the series, so I don't know if there's actually been like a rise in sales for it. But obviously, Tabata must be doing something and Shonen Jump's giving them this many colored cover pages in a row. Now, the chapter actually opens up with Julius, Charlotte, and Real basically giving a detailed report to Gaja exactly what their plan is going forward. The fact that they're going to train up for the next 2 days, and then on the 3rd day, early in the morning, they're going to invade the Spade Kingdom in secret. And he basically says that him and the Spirit Guardians are already training with the elves to get stronger so that they can help out in the fight. Which is very interesting to find out that not only are Noelle and them going to be training with the elves, but we're going to have Gaja training with them as well, along with the rest of the Spirit Guardians. Which is a good thing, because I know a lot of people, myself included, were very disappointed with the fact that we did not really get to see the Spirit Guardians, people who were built up to be captain level over in the Heart Kingdom, do anything really during the whole last part of the arc, except for Gaja. Because, I mean, it's not like he doesn't know exactly how the fans felt about the way he represented or introduced us to the Spirit Guardians during the last part of the arc, because fans everywhere were very vocal with the fact that they were very, very disappointed with how the Spirit Guardians were basically all defeated off screen. And even though he did give a valid reason as to why the Spirit Guardians were all defeated off screen, because obviously Vanica, having invaded the Heart Kingdom before, knew to bring with her Dark Disciples who had abilities who would be great counters to each of the Spirit Guardians, it still doesn't make up for the fact that these characters were hyped up for a long time, or at least since we were introduced to the Heart Kingdom and saw how extreme and how powerful Gaja was. And finding out that there were at least 4 other people as powerful as him, or supposedly as powerful as him, over in the Heart Kingdom, finding out that they were all defeated off screen and then were basically saved by the people they were training, that was very disappointing to find out. Also, in the fan translated version of the chapter, which I'm basing my review on, Gaja also mentioned that there's another country that's going to be training up over the next 2 days, and if they can get strong enough, they're going to be joining them in the fight as well. Which, obviously, he's talking about the Diamond Kingdom, which brought up the question in my head, didn't we already find out earlier on during the arc that the Spade Kingdom had completely invaded and conquered the Diamond Kingdom? So how are they training up? But I ignored that because I got hyped over the idea that we will be finally seeing Mars returning to the series. Because if you remember, the last time we saw Mars was during the Witch Force arc at the end of it, when he said he was going back to the Diamond Kingdom to try to reform it from the inside out. And that was the last time we ever saw him. Now, it'd actually be really poetic if Mars came back now to help out in the fight against the Space Kingdom, not only because obviously he wants to protect his country, the Diamond Kingdom, which the Space Kingdom already invaded, but because of the fact that the last time Asta and Mars saw each other, Asta helped Mars save Fauna, someone very precious to him. So it would actually be very cool to see Mars finally return to the series by returning the favor and helping Asta save Yami. Now, Tabata actually does this very cool thing in the second page of the chapter where he does a parallel between Charlotte and Gaja, where after they get done the call, we see that Gaja has this very, very upset look on his face, and he's thinking about Lord Bertica, and he's basically declaring that he's going to be the one to personally save her to make up for the fact that he failed in protecting her. And we see in the exact same panel length, given pretty much the exact same facial expression, Charlotte thinking about Yami and saying that she's going to be the one to save him. And it's really cool to see the way Tabata is basically comparing them in this chapter, because if you think about it, when it comes down to it, alright, the Spirit Guardians are the equivalent of captains, basically, over in the Heart Kingdom. And when it comes to that level of, social status, when we look at those two groups, Gaja would obviously be the one most invested in saving Lord Bertica, because not only is he a Spirit Guardian, but he was also her personal protector. So obviously he had a stronger connection to her than the other Spirit Guardians did. So her being kidnapped affected him greater, and he would be the one more determined to save her. And then when it comes to Charlotte, even though we saw in the beginning of the captain's meeting that pretty much at least half the captains personally wanted to go into the Space Kingdom and try to save Yami themselves, she's the one the most upset and has the biggest drive to go and rescue him because, well, she's in love with him. And it kind of throws the idea, it kind of hints at, at least makes you think about it when you realize that he's comparing the two characters, that maybe he's implying that maybe Gaja might also be in love with Lord Bertica. And we do see that he actually does at least seemingly care about her in more than just a guardian role. He actually does seemingly want her to have like a normal kind of life, or at the very least is happy seeing her have friends, as we saw back in, I want to say it was chapter like 230 something, when she was hanging out with Noelle and them. And it would make a lot of sense for him and possibly her as well to have feelings for each other, because of the fact that they, as we know, probably spent a lot of time together throughout their history. And they are very similar in age. I mean, Gaja's around like 26, 27, and Lord Bertica's 21. So, and as we obviously seen throughout the series, Tabata, unlike a lot of other Shonen Jump writers, isn't really afraid to dive into the romantic aspects of his story. So we could potentially see by the end of this, finding out that Gaja actually is in love with Lord Bertica, maybe same as well with her, she's in love with him. Who knows? Either way, Tabata did a great job basically paralleling these two characters on this page. Now we head over to the Black Bull headquarters, and this is the part of the chapter that made me feel the most uncomfortable, and I feel like Tabata, he's doing a great job with Nox's character. I'm really liking what he's doing with Nox's character, but I feel like he is trying to keep us in the state when it comes to how we feel about Nox's character, where we don't know if we like him or not. Because when he was first introduced, everyone was all on board with him. At least for the most part, most fans were on board with Nox's character. They were kind of like in how straightforward he was. And even when we saw him with the captains, even though he was insulting them, and these are characters that we all come to know and love, seeing this brand new character basically kind of put them in their place, it should have pissed us off, but the way he was doing it wasn't that bad, so we kind of let it go, and we still were digging his character. But then we see him digging into the characters we spent the most time with throughout the series: Vanessa, Gordon, not Gordon because he wasn't there, but Vanessa, Finral, Gouge, Gray. He even comes at, and they're not even there right now, Magna and Zora. Seeing him come out with these characters that, again, we've spent the most time with throughout the series and have come to very much love, it's kind of hard to watch, and it kind of is very upsetting. And again, I feel like Tabata actually wants us to feel this way. He wants us to not be sure if we like this character or not. And he wants to kind of keep us in that limbo space until he ends up revealing Nox's backstory. Because once he does that, he'll finally decide whether or not he actually wants to keep the character as a likable character, or start presenting him as more of a likable character, or if he's just going to have his fans outright hate him. But as of right now, he wants us to basically stay in that limbo spot of not knowing how exactly we feel about him. And I'm sure that once we actually do get his backstory revealed, we're going to get that moment like we've gotten with a lot of the other characters in the Black Bulls, where Asta and him have a one-on-one, or actually have some kind of a moment where Asta encourages him to be friendlier and more outgoing and more of a family member with the Black Bulls, like he's done with Vanessa. Or yeah, he did it with Vanessa, he did it with Luck, he did it with Magna a little bit. He didn't do it with Gordon and Gray. They're pretty much the only characters that he hasn't had that moment with just yet. But to be fair, those two characters have basically been background characters in the Black Bulls this entire series. I mean, they've gotten some development here and there, but for a majority of the series, they've been kind of background characters. I mean, hell, we didn't even know what Gray really looked like until the Sea Temple arc. And even after we got a reveal of what she looked like, she still went on to be pretty much a background character until we got into, like, kind of the beginning of the reincarnation arc when her, Gordon, and Gouch and Henry teamed up to fight off against the Midnight Sun, who were invading the base in order to take the magic stone they had. And then again, after that, even though we did get a little bit of importance with Gordon finding out that his family has some kind of connection to curses, the two of them still kind of went back to being relegated to background characters, and we only started just recently bringing Gray again into the forefront by introducing the idea that her magic is actually different from what we originally thought it was. And you know what, while we're talking about Gray anyway, she is the only person here at the Black Bull headquarters who actually speaks up and talks back to Nock while he's basically ridiculing each member of the Black Bulls. The fact that Gray, the quiet, shy, not outspoken at all character was the one to actually speak up in defense of everyone is a big step in her character development. And I like the fact that Tabata actually is really showing that she is going to be important during this arc and actually constantly reminding us of her presence. Now, even though Nock did basically come down hard on all of them, he did tell them about the plan, and he did basically give them the option to train if they wanted to get stronger the next 2 days so that they can try to help and save their captain, or not. I mean, he basically, he didn't say, they don't have to help out, but he basically kind of left the option there that they didn't have to get stronger if they didn't want to, and they didn't have to participate, because he honestly probably doesn't even believe that they would be useful anyway. But anyway, after that, we see him leading Asta to this abandoned home, which we end up finding out used to be the home of a noble in the Clover Kingdom. And I mean, it's pretty obvious that's Nock's former home, and we even see a picture of a kid and his family, and the kid kind of looks like a younger version of Nock, and we see that the kid had a sibling, and the sibling's face is either blocked by debris or it's kind of scratched out. And it's very clear, and a lot of people already kind of speculated on this after seeing the spoilers for this video, or spoilers for this chapter, that Nock most likely had a twin. People started thinking, I'm agreeing with them as well, that Nock's twin was actually the person that Jack remembered, and that's the reason why Jack said that his magic was different back then, and that Nock also said that, that person's dead now. Back during that chapter, we all pretty much figured out, or pretty much thought, that Nock was saying that, he's a changed person now, that he's completely different than the person he used to be that Jack remembers. But what the person that Jack actually remembers was actually Nock's brother, and that the reason why Nock had such hatred for Yami is because of the fact that he got his brother killed. I'm guessing that we're most likely going to end up getting Nock's backstory by the end of this arc. So by the time that we get it, we should end up finding out exactly what Nock's backstory is, why he hates Yami so much, and end up finding out if it's true, the theory that everyone has right now, if Nock's brother is actually the person in that picture, and if he's the same person that Jack remembers seeing with Yami. Now once they get to a certain room in the house, Nock uses his shadow magic to transport him and Asta to this kind of like seemingly ritual site. And if I had to guess, because of the fact that Nock had to bring Asta to the house and go to that certain room in order to activate that spell to transport them to that ritual site, I'm thinking that first, they needed to go to the house. They absolutely had to go to the house because that house is connected to that site. And that this is most likely the place where Nock formed his contract with Guy Modelo. And there is a little bit of evidence for it in this chapter because, one, when they get there, we see that there's this magic circle that Nock immediately walks right into, and Asta does end up following him later on in the chapter. But on top of that, when Nock basically takes off his cloak in the chapter, he reveals the fact that he actually has this necklace with these 4 items on it. Now, the 4 items obviously correspond with the 4 demons we saw him summon during the captain's meeting and that we saw on the cover of this page, or this chapter. And he said that each one of those items on this necklace is actually an artifact that is essential when it comes to forming a contract with a demon. But what he reveals to us in this chapter is that Asta is actually a little bit different than most devil possessed. Because unlike him, who actually has to have artifacts in order to summon this demon, Asta's demon is not only tied to its grimoire, because it's residing inside of it, but just like with Naruto and Kurama, his demon does reside inside Asta as well. And Nock stating this is what's going to make it more believable once Asta is done training on how to summon AMD's actual real powers, that when he ends up fighting off against Lucifero, it is believable that he would actually stand a chance of defeating him. So Asta follows Nock into the ritual circle, and as soon as he steps foot in it, anti-magic starts enveloping his body. He wakes up in basically this weird dimension, probably the inner space that he's come to talk to AMD before in, and when he notices his right arm is missing, that's when he looks up and he sees that AMD is sitting right in front of him. And then, if that's not only a great cliffhanger alone, we cut back to the real world and we see that AMD has taken over Asa's body completely, except for like one small part of his eye that is showing. The rest of Asa's body is completely enveloped in AMD, and we see that him and Nock are most likely going to be fighting while Asa is in the spiritual world, fighting off against AMD in order to tame him so that they can form a proper contract. There's nothing really to speculate on when it comes to this ending for the chapter because we already know exactly what's going to happen, or we already know what the plot is basically implying is happening. AMD and Asa are going to fight off, and they're going to come to some kind of understanding and form a contract, a proper contract. And while they're doing that, we'll have Nock facing off, or at least talking to AMD in the real world, and trying to like basically stall time so that Asa has a amount of time he needs to form that contract. But anyway, guys, that's it for the chapter. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.